Long before the Bible, before Stonehenge, the Egyptian pyramids a far-off future to unfold, and the Ice Age a distant dream. There was a vast and profound understanding of the world, already being passed down from one generation to the next, not through books or temples, but through stories, land, stars, and song. Some say it began 65,000 years ago. Others dare to claim closer to 100,000. And yet, it still lives now. Spoken, sung, danced, and painted into the land itself. This is not a myth, not a religion, or even a belief, but something far deeper and more powerful. A spiritual system older than any other still alive today, with gods that are not above the world, but inside it, inside stone, water, stars, and breath. It is a truth born outside time itself, and that pulses through the red earth of a living land. So, what is it? What could possibly have survived this long, yet provide clarity and wisdom in ways we can still barely grasp now? What kind of civilization dreamed the world into being, and still walk in the echo of that dream? Welcome to Vortex Mythology, where today we are diving deep into the dreaming of the Aboriginal Australians. Before we take this ride, please do consider subscribing and give this video a like. These simple acts do huge things for the channel and allow us to continue this adventure. We often speak of the oldest religions, but what if there is something far older than even the concept of religion as we know it? Before temples, before even the most ancient of gods with names and altars, there was the dreaming. Not a single belief, but a way of seeing the world. Spread across the Australian continent, the world's oldest continuous cultures have survived for at least 65,000 years, and many suggest far longer. At sites like Lake Mungo, archaeologists have uncovered ancient burials and footprints in hardened clay. In Arnhem Land, ochre rock art whispers of worlds imagined tens of millennia ago. These findings predate not just recorded history, but history as a concept. It's older than civilization, older than written language, and yet it's still alive. And unlike the dead religions of stone gods and crumbled temples, this is a worldview carried in memory, ceremony, song, and land. Not a relic of the past, it is the present, and it has always been. Among hundreds of Aboriginal groups across Australia, each with their own laws, languages, and sacred landscapes, this one thread of the dreaming endures. To outsiders, it's often described as mythology, but to many Aboriginal peoples, it is not past, not story, it is reality. Not history, but happening. It is not belief preserved in amber, it is living lore, renewed with every retelling. A parallel plane of existence, a way of being that pulses beneath the everyday, where ancestral beings move across a formless land, shaping the rivers, the rocks, the stars, and us. Each mountain, each tree, each waterhole is a living echo of these beings. Their actions are written into the land itself. And this is the key. Aboriginal culture holds that time is not linear. The dreaming is not then, it is always. And in a world that often looks for beginnings and ends, here is a culture that lives inside an endless present. Not bound by clocks or calendars, it is not a past age, but an ongoing one. The everywhen. As the Walpuri word Jukurpa suggests, this sacred reality can't be neatly translated. Certainly not by Western standards. And as a result, it can be extremely hard, if not impossible, for us to truly grasp. It combines lore, time, story, identity, and place. It's not a myth in the Western sense. It's the deep structure of existence. One elder said it simply: the land owns us, not the other way around. So what does it mean to live inside a reality where past, present, and future are one? And how do you carry such a reality for tens of thousands of years? The dreaming explains not just the origin of people and places, but how to live. It contains codes of respect, relationships between kin, responsibilities to land, obligations to ancestors. It teaches that every being has a place, and no being stands alone. The lizard, the cloud, the elder, the river, all are part of the same network of meaning. You are not separate from the land. You are the land. It remembers you. And perhaps the most extraordinary expression of this world are the songlines. These are not just songs. They are maps, histories, laws, and cosmologies encoded in rhythm and verse. Long ago, the ancestral beings walked the land, singing as they went. Each verse brought a mountain into being, a waterhole, a dune, a desert flower. Their journeys shaped the world and left a path to follow. To walk a songline is to walk through story, through lore, through memory. And by singing the land, you keep it alive. This is how dreaming is carried. Not in books, but in breath. It's said the world itself was sung into existence, and through songlines, it is sung still. So what kinds of beings created this world? And how do they differ from the gods we know? Could the world itself be sung into being? How do these stories hold laws, ethics, cosmology? And what kinds of beings created this world? How do they differ from gods we know? We have now asserted that this Aboriginal knowledge is not written in scriptures or carved into monuments, but rather carried in the land, in songlines, in ceremony, and in the stars above. This knowledge is a map that moves through the landscape, linking sacred places with sacred meaning. To sing a songline is to travel a route across the land, physically, spiritually, cosmologically. Each verse aligns with a landmark, a hill, a tree, a waterhole. Miss a note, and you may be lost. Some songlines are local. Others stretch across thousands of kilometres, crossing territories, binding peoples. Some are walked, some danced, some only whispered. And yet, each one is a thread. Together, they weave a continent of knowledge. But who sang these paths into being? Again, these are not gods in the Western sense, not distant, all-powerful figures dwelling above. In the dreaming, the world is shaped by ancestral beings, some human-like, some animal, some neither. They were the first to walk the land, and in walking, they formed it. Their stories are the bones of the world. A snake becomes a river. A dingo becomes a star. A spirit becomes a hill, a cave, a cloud. Many transformed into country itself. Not just terrain, but a conscious, living entity. Aboriginal people belong to the land, and through the dreaming, they are in constant relationship with it. Many Aboriginal people speak of these stories as having multiple layers. Some say 4, some say 30. Stories for children, stories for initiation, stories for elders, with each layer unlocking deeper cosmology, deeper lore. One such story tells of the great Rainbow Serpent, one of the most revered dreaming beings in many regions. It is said she carved the landscape with her enormous, sinuous body, creating rivers, valleys, and sacred waterholes. Some say she sleeps beneath these waterholes still, her breath rising in the mist. But she is not merely a creator. She is a judge too, a force of consequence. In Arnhem Land, it is told when the people broke the sacred laws of sharing water and food, she stirred, writhing from her slumber beneath the red earth. Her coils shattered stone, her tongue summoned storm clouds. As punishment and cleansing, she flooded the land. But from the wreckage came rebirth. New waterholes, new animals, and fresh paths across the terrain. Chaos and order, destruction and creation, action and consequence, always paired. Life cycles and flows, always bringing natural balance. In some traditions, there are 2 rainbow serpents, one male, one female. In others, She is linked to fertility, or the seasons, or the colours of the land. The names change from region to region. Waggle, Ngalyod, Borlung, but the presence remains. Why is she found in so many nations? Perhaps because it is one nature's primal forces that destroys, carves the land, because water is the giver of life on earth, and the story of water's journey is everyone's story. And of course, she is not the only being sung across the continent. In the far northwest, in the Kimberley, we find the Wandjina, powerful cloud and rain spirits, their images painted in ochre on stone. They have no mouths, because, it is said, their power is so great it must never be spoken. They are the bringers of monsoon, of growth, of storms, and the guardians of sacred law. In the southeast, there is Bunjil, the great eaglehawk spirit. He created the rivers and mountains, gave laws to the people, and then flew into the sky, becoming a star. In the sky law of New South Wales, there is Daramulum, the son of the Sky Father, Biami, linked to the moon, the stars, and the initiation of boys into manhood. These beings are written into the land, but also into art. Rock faces covered in ochre, sand paintings made for ceremony, totems carried through generations. If they shaped the world, where are they now? Some say they remain as stone. Some say they returned to the sky. Others believe they walk still, unseen, but ever present. Another story tells of a child swallowed after trespassing on forbidden land. The child is returned, changed, marked by dreaming. A message to all. Sacred knowledge is not harmless or passive. It is powerful and active. And it is not inherited by birth alone. It must be earned. Ceremony is how people enter the dreaming, through song, dance, and silence. Children learn stories in one form. Then, as they grow, as they change, so do the stories, deepening in meaning, and with this understanding. And so we see that this is not mythology locked in the past. It is participatory, breathing through the people who live it. Among Aboriginal communities, there are sacred practices known as men's business and women's business, distinct knowledge paths held in balance. The eternal dance of what we may know as the divine feminine and masculine, two forces seeking harmony and balance, natural order. These are not just roles, they are responsibilities to family, to land, to law. In many traditions, a person's dreaming is not just the world's origin, it is their own. A guiding path, a spiritual fingerprint, meaning, to know the dreaming is to know your dreaming and who you are. An individual identity, yes, but only as part of a much larger picture. And above it all, the stars. Aboriginal astronomers saw the emu in the sky, not formed by stars, but by the dark spaces between them. The emu appears lying down, then standing tall as the seasons change. When its neck is high, it's time to collect emu eggs. When it vanishes, the season has passed. They used star maps, not for night navigation like European sailors, but as a kind of celestial memory palace. These patterns in the sky mirrored routes on the land, guiding people from one ceremony to another, from country to country. One lawman described how the stars formed a cosmic narrative. Ceremonies on the ground echoed constellations above. The sky wasn't a distant place to gaze at. It was a mirror of the ground. The Seven Sisters story, one of the most enduring, tells of 7 ancestral women, radiant and ice-skinned, who fled from an obsessive male figure. He chases them across land and sky forever. The women rise into the heavens as stars, and he becomes Orion's belt. This story, with its variations, is told all over Australia. And uncannily, it resembles the Greek myth of the Pleiades. 2 stories, 2 hemispheres, same stars, same chase. But the story is more than celestial drama. In some communities, when the 7 sisters first appear low in the winter sky, a frost falls. This is not random, and of course ties with the seasons themselves, but it is also the start of a coming-of-age ritual. Boys scrape frost from the ground and rub it into their skin, toughening them for manhood. Girls too begin a sacred process. Bone piercings, paint, ceremony. It is all watched by the sisters above. And in one story, when 2 of the sisters are kidnapped by a spirit of fire, their icy bodies begin to melt, quenching his flames and leaving them dimmed forever, whilst the remaining sisters join them in the sky. The Barai, young men who admired them from afar, also die from longing and transform into Orion's belt, forever chasing, never reaching. Perhaps this is one of the oldest stories of all. The land, the stars, the ceremonies, the beings, the people, all part of one vast, interconnected lore. But if the dreaming isn't in the past, rather the ever-present, are we not still in it? The dreaming does not end, because it never began. It is cyclical, ever-present, written into ceremony and kinship, into birth and death. It is lore, story, science and spirit, all bound together. In some places, stories explain the shape of the mountains, like how 2 dogs chased an emu across the land, spilling its blood into the red earth. That track became a trade route. The trade route became a songline, and the songline became ceremony. These aren't just stories. They are infrastructure. They are maps and memories, geographies of meaning. And this is where time itself begins to shift. In the Western mind, time moves forward, linear, like a river. Yesterday behind you, tomorrow ahead. But in Aboriginal cosmology, time spirals. It twists, folds, and deepens. It is not a line. It is a field, an unfolding presence. In the dreaming, this everywhen is the term that best fits. The past and the future are not back there or out ahead. They are here, now, always. This is why the land is not a backdrop. It is a participant, a witness and a relative. The rocks are sacred. The waterholes have memory. Country is not owned. It owns you. The dreaming speaks through this land, and mirrored in the stars above, and so all is one. In some coastal regions, stories tell of a time when the sea swallowed the land, of islands that no longer exist, of tides that rose unnaturally. These were once dismissed as fantasy. Now, it is found, of course, that they align with sea level rise events from over 10,000 years ago. One story from the Yuali people speaks of Mulianga, the eagle hawk, who soars across the sky from Heavy Tree Gap in Alice Springs to Byron Bay. His route mirrors a real-world ceremonial path, and above him, the stars act as mnemonic anchors, a cosmic map of memory. The constellations guide the journey, singing it back into being. Modern astronomers are beginning to take note. What if songlines are not symbolic, but scientific? Encoded in these oral traditions are precise geospatial paths, ecological data, and star-based navigation techniques. No paper, compass, or telescope, simply memory, passed from mouth to mouth, heart to land, for over 65,000 years. Could this be the most sophisticated oral knowledge system ever created? And yet, this knowledge was almost severed. Colonization brought trauma on a scale difficult to grasp. Entire nations were displaced, languages outlawed, children stolen, ceremonies banned, storytellers silenced. The oldest cultures on Earth were treated as if they were vanishing, or already gone. But the dreaming did not vanish. It endured. In lullabies, in carvings, in footprints, in fragments held close through generations. Elders kept the fire alive. Not a bonfire, but a cultural ember, carried through devastation and darkness, hidden when necessary, protected at all costs. And whilst there is still some way to go, and much to be repaired, now that ember is beginning to catch again. Art centers bloom in the desert. Ceremonies once illegal are now celebrated in the open. Language revival projects are bringing ancient syllables back to life. Children once disconnected from culture are returning to country, to kin, and to law. Aboriginal law is not simply about governance. It is a living system, moral, ecological, spiritual. It tells you where you may walk, who you may marry, what you must protect, and how to care for the land that sustains you. It governs fire and kinship, burial and birth, hunting and healing. Whilst not written in books, when a story is painted on bark, it still carries weight. It is not decoration. It is a map of law. When feet strike the ground in dance, they echo the movements of ancestral beings. When a child learns their totem, they are not receiving a symbol. They are receiving a guardian and an obligation. So how did this knowledge survive? As we have discovered, because it lives and breathes. Even today, elders initiate the young. New songlines are woven to reflect shifting landscapes. Dreaming evolves, not as something rewritten, but as something lived. It adapts because it must. It is not a relic. It is a relationship. A relationship between human and land, past and present, seen and unseen. Imagine standing in the desert of Western Australia, the red dust soft beneath your feet. You begin to sing. The words name the rocks beside you, the tree ahead, the bend in the dry creek. You walk, you sing, you remember. Behind each word is a being, a memory, a law. And as you pass into new country, your song changes. The melody stays, but the words shift. Another people now sing the next verse. This is how knowledge moves, across language, across land, across generations. And now, a question. What if the dreaming isn't only Aboriginal? What if it's a way of seeing, a way of being, that any of us can begin to listen for? You don't have to be Aboriginal to honour the dreaming, but you must come with humility, to listen, to learn, to recognise the land not as property, but as relative, not as resource, but as teacher. The dreaming is not locked in the past, and so the real question is no longer when was the dreaming, but rather, where do you and I stand within it? In a world where gods so often sit above us, this is a belief system where the divine walks beside us, where the story of creation lives in the riverbed, in the red dust, in the stars, and in the breath of every song passed from ancestor to child. Older than the Bible, older than any monument, yet still alive, here, now. This is not just the story of a people. It is the story of a way to live and of creation itself. A reminder that mythology is not always myth, and that the so-called gods, the forces of nature that shape life, live among us. We began with a question. Is this the oldest living religion, or rather, spiritual belief system in the world? But perhaps that's the wrong question, because what we're speaking of is not just belief. It is identity. It is memory. It is obligation. It is life. Not a story of the past, but a breath still held in the land. A whisper in the wind, a shadow in the stars, a pulse in the red earth. And if you truly listen, you might hear it. The Rainbow Serpent shifting in her sleep. The sisters laughing in the frost. The breath of country remembering your step. Yet, in honouring it, we must also speak clearly. It is easy to over-romanticize Indigenous worldviews, and even their struggles. But the survival of Aboriginal spirituality has not been easy. A far cry from the noble savage myth, or the fantasy of unbroken tradition. It has been long-standing, yes, but also hard-fought. And yet, despite concerted efforts to erase it, through silence, through struggle, through strength, it has endured. Why? Because it was true. Because it mattered. Because it still matters. Today, there is a resurgence, a fire rekindled. But it is not just the fire of ancient stories. It is the fire of present-day resistance, renewal, and responsibility. And if we are to walk alongside it, we must do more than admire. We must listen, we must learn, and above all, we must respect. So yes, this is the oldest belief system still alive today. But more than that, it is a compass, a mirror, and a challenge. It is a song still being sung, a map still being walked, a story still unfolding. And if you truly pay attention, you may find that the dreaming is not so far away. Thank you for walking this path with us. If you found this journey meaningful, please subscribe, share, and let the stories echo onward. There is more to uncover, and more stories waiting to be sung.